Welcome to the Nobody Guide to Life, where we provide tips and tools for personal growth, personal development, and your spiritual journey that you can use right now in your everyday life. I'm J.A. Plosker. Thank you for joining us. We're glad to have you here. You can always find out more at nobodiesview.com and thenobodybible.com, or you can check us out at Twitter and Facebook at Nobody's View. Our show notes are at nobodiesview.com, and if you like what you hear, we'd welcome a subscription or a review. We'd appreciate it. So if you were listening last week, you already know about incredible photographer Greg Davis, artist and seeker. If you don't, head back an episode and listen to the first part. I think you're really going to enjoy it. This week, I wanted to return to the park in Austin with Craig and continue the conversation. And I want to hear about some interesting projects that he's up to, especially in India. So welcome back, Greg.
Hey, what's up, man?
Last week was amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for letting me share. I appreciate it.
No, it was wonderful. So when we left off last time, you had taken us all the way through that incredible story about the young man who was drawn to your work from Vietnam. And now I know that you're involved in some other projects, and you've talked to me a little bit about them, and I've had an opportunity to view parts of that work. And I was wondering if you could just now take us on a tour of what you're doing now and where this search has taken you.
Yeah, so, when I got back from that initial one-year trip, that was 2005, and I didn't really know where to head. I hadn't come from the arts. I didn't have an art degree. I'd come from a business background, selling computers for a living. So someone convinced me. They saw some of these pictures from that original trip. I don't want to call it work because at the time, although it was a lot of work, I didn't really look at it that way. They were some photographs I'd captured. And I set up on a street corner in Austin, Texas, down on West 6th Street, and I call it my chicken coop days. It was very simple, and it was $25 to set up this booth, and I thought I'd give it a shot. And from that very first day, I knew that what I was capturing was touching other people. I was basically connecting two worlds.
Right.
So, fast forward 5 years later, National Geographic Creative, which is the agency at National Geographic, reached out to me and signed me to a contract, which is one of the highest honors I could ever imagine.
Wow.
In this business. I'm completely honored to even be able to say that. Like it's some of these guys and girls are just absolutely phenomenal photographers, and to be mentioned, in certain times with this company is beyond sort of what I would have ever imagined. But, with this comes responsibility, and with this comes, hey, if I'm going to do this, I got to go all in. I mean, this is my opportunity to really share as much as I possibly can, get out of me what's in there, and just, go for it. So let's see, that was 2010 is when I signed. Well, 2012, a couple of years later, I got a call from a museum that said, hey, and it was here in Texas. They said, hey, we want you to shoot a project for us, and you're the artist, so do whatever it is you want to do, but your theme is myth and legend.
Wow.
So they said you can either use work that you've already created or you can create new. Well, because it was my first ever museum exhibit, and that for me that was a huge feather in my cap, I wanted to kind of create something new. I didn't want it to be old work. The very first thing that came to my mind when they said myth and legend was there's a pilgrimage, a massive pilgrimage that happens every 12 years. The big one is every 12 years, the Kumbh Mela.
Right.
And I just, when they said myth and legend, I was like, when is Kumbh Mela? Because I didn't follow it at the time. And so I Googled, and sure enough, it was coming up in 6 months.
Now, can you talk a little bit? Let me just stop you right there. Can you talk a little bit about what that event is for our listeners who may not know?
Sure. So Kumbh Mela, what Kumbh Mela is it's a Hindu pilgrimage. It's in India. The location is at the confluence of the Ganges, the Yamuna River, which is the river that goes by the Taj Mahal. And then they believe there's a third river underground that connects those three, and that river is called the Saraswati. So at the Ganges, Yamuna, and Saraswati rivers. And by the way, it took me forever to pronounce that correctly, but I finally got it. So at that confluence, this water, every 12 years, has the ability to break the cycle of reincarnation. As a Hindu, they believe that they're going to be reincarnated and be reborn next life according to how they live their life this life.
Right.
So if they were not a good person, next life they're going to be sort of, if you will, downgraded to socioeconomically. Maybe they're a snake, maybe they're a dog. They're challenged in some way because of a previous life. If they were a good person, next life they'll be elevated, if you will.
Right.
So, and that, whatever that looks like to people, you know, I don't want to define what that means, but or what that is, even good or bad, but things happen. So I always thought that people would want to come back. Like, I just thought that just, hey, life's so cool, let's just do this again. But
Right.
100 million people didn't think so. This 2013 was the Kumbh Mela, the Maha Kumbh Mela, and 100 million was the estimated figure by the Indian government that made that journey. 100 million. I mean, it was 40 square miles of tent camps.
Wow.
Right. And people are coming in. I mean, most people are walking, taking the train. Some people on the opposite end of that spectrum are flying in on choppers and airplanes, you know. And some people are staying in hotels, but those book up really quickly. The city is called Allahabad. It's the name of the city where it's held. And Allahabad is, I think it's around, I may be wrong here, but I want to say it's around 200,000 people normally.
Right.
So it swells, you know, to 100 million. I mean, 100 million.
It's mind-boggling.
It's totally mind-boggling. It's, I've never seen anything like it. Now, that's 100 million over 55 days.
Right.
So there are certain bathing days that are special, and those bathing days, it swelled to 30 million on February the 10th, 2013. So 30 million, basically the size of Texas, all down in one central location.
Wow.
That morning, 4:30 in the morning, we were there at the banks of the river, and it was as far as the human eye could possibly see. I mean, people ask me all the time, what does it look like? Like, I was like, well, you know, it looks like about 100,000 because that's all you can take in.
Right, right.
You can't take in any more than that. So it's just constant 100 million, you know. So it's mythical. It's legendary. It definitely fit what this museum was asking of me. And
that's where you wanted to go.
Yeah, I know, of all places. But it's been amazing, the journey itself, after the journey there. I mean, I was a pilgrim, right? I mean, I was one of the 100 million, but I wasn't necessarily a pilgrim of Hinduism, of faith. I was a pilgrim of purpose.
Right, right.
And my purpose is, through my work, to be a reminder that we're part of something greater than ourselves. We decided to do a film. I decided to do a film as a part of this exhibit, just to give people context, because it is such a foreign thing. And it's amazing how many people haven't actually heard of it. So I was bringing this thing, not from a educational standpoint. The film is more just context, and it was going to be an art piece. And it was my first time to ever direct and shoot a film. But I brought a young man who was my cinematographer, who did a great job. And we created an 11-minute short that complemented this work ultimately. And then that Cloth Paper Dreams is the name of that piece.
Okay.
And it just got picked up on Gaia as a streaming service.
Oh.
So it's going to have a life of its own, which is super exciting for us.
Right. That's nice.
So what happened was, during that event, there was a sadhu, there was a holy man on the banks of the river named, I didn't know his name, but his name's Mohan. But this holy man in a manger, very simple Indian man, waves at Travis and I. Travis and I are walking on the banks of the river that day, and Mohan waves. And I look at Travis and I said, you want to go have a talk, you know, go sit down. So we approached Mohan, we sat down, and we ended up spending in total about 3 days with the man, just hanging out, questions, talking to him, doing some filming. We started getting in tight with him and say, hey, do you mind if we could do some filming? We're doing this small film about this. What is this thing to you? You know? And so
right.
we got him on film, talking about what Kumbh Mela is to him and where he was from. And at one point we said, well, you know, we're from America. Where are you from? And he looks at us and has these sparkly little eyes, and he says, the sky is my roof, the land is my room.
Wow.
I know. I was like, what? Well, wait a second. So you wonder. I mean, he said, yeah, I came from a wealthy family, and I gave it all up, and now my life has no tribulation. So for me, you know, I'm an American. It's all about more, 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 right? I
Right.
mean, let's get more. That's going to help us, you know?
Right.
And this man's telling me the opposite. I had that and I gave it away. So there's intrigue automatically in just the choices that he's made. I'm not going to be a sadhu. It's not in my blood, but I can respect the fact that he has this non-attachment
Right.
to things, right? It's really taught me a little bit about being attachment to these things that we have. So we spent 3 days. We engaged with Mohan. At one point, I said, "Where do you hang? Do you hang out somewhere like a lot, or are you just walking all the time?" Or, he said, "No, I live near the birthplace of Lord Krishna. He doesn't have a home, but he said he lived there. So I wasn't exactly sure what all that meant, but I do remember sort of, okay, made a mental note. And I knew where the birthplace of Lord Krishna was because Holi, which is the festival of color, is held in Mathura, which is where the birthplace of Lord Krishna is. Right. And I'd been to Holi the year before. So it kind of stuck with me, the memory of him saying that. Well, 4 years later, that work, well, first of all, that work, it did really well. I've really pushed it to get out there because it's been really nice for these middle-sized communities in like 100,000, 200,000 people, towns in Texas to be able right. to embrace the Indian community in their towns, in their communities. The art community and the Indian community come together over this Kumbh Mela exhibit. And so it's not only photography and film, but I've also partnered with an Indian sitar player and an Indian tabla player. So I bring in Indian music. We have the Indian dance company do dance, and then the centers will normally serve a food. So it's like this fully immersive experience of India, right?
And you bring this short film. I know one of the films you do is like a 10 or 11-minute film. You bring that film with you?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, so when I go to these art centers and museums, I would bring the photographs. I would bring the film. We would open it up with music and dance, and we would serve food, and then I would talk about this project, you know. And it was really, you know, really neat for me to be able to see how these communities were engaging. These new peoples were coming together because of the project. So it was connecting. It was literally connecting worlds, which is a really awesome place for me to be in. So successful that I thought, man, I've got to go back. I want to go back and I've got to go back and try and find Mohan. The sky is my roof. The land is my room. Like, where do you start, you know?
In our last episode, you talked so passionately about asking and how things just started happening for you, the God winks, following your intuition. You said 4 years later, what was that feeling like when that moment hit and you think, I got to go find this guy? Where do you think that came from? What were the moments around that for you?
You know, it's funny that you asked that, because what I asked for, I ultimately asked. And what I asked for was and I couldn't work with Travis, the previous guy. He's busy. He's got his own business now. He's got 2 children. He was out. So I really needed someone that I could trust, that had the work ethic, that had the heart, that I could trust. A filmmaker. I couldn't be behind the camera if I'm the one in front of the camera.
Right.
And quite frankly, it's super awkward. Like, I'm not an actor, and I don't really prefer being in front of the camera, but I pushed myself out in front of it when I made the choice to go do this. So there I am out in front. So I needed someone to really be camera one, and they were running this film. And so who is that? Who is this guy? I don't really.
Right.
I'm in a coffee shop one day. A guy walks in. I just gotten back from Kumbh Mela. A guy walks in. I can tell the DSLR when it's got a microphone on it. You can pretty much tell that's someone who's doing film, most likely. So I walk up to him. I'm like, hey man, what's going on? He said, oh, I just moved to town. I've been couch surfing. The lady I've been couch surfing with kicked me out. I'm just kind of here at the coffee shop, like trying to figure out what my next move is. And if you don't know what couch surfing is, couchsurfing.com, you can go and basically surf someone's couch for free anywhere in the world.
Right.
It takes a special person to open their doors to you. It also takes a special person to want to go into someone's house and sleep on their couch. I mean, and sometimes
a lot of trust.
Sometimes it's a room too, so you have your private area. But he'd been doing that and it worked out. He'd moved from Philadelphia to Austin. He was rolling the dice. He came from a professional background. He was into money management, and he was about 36-ish, something like that, 35, about when I had left mine. And so I saw myself in this young man. I say young man, he's 10 years younger than me. But I saw myself in him, you know. I was like, well, tell me more. What's going on? He said, well, I've been driving across country and I shoot film and just, here I am trying to find a place to live. I said, I tell you what, man, I'm getting a good vibe. I'm leaving town this afternoon for Houston. Here's keys to my studio. There you can see. He's like, what? I'm like,
wow.
I'm like, yeah, it's all you. And he looked at me like I had three eyeballs. He's like, what? And I'm like, dude, if you need help, you're in. Like, I trust you. It's cool. So that made an impact on him. And we built this friendship. His name is Brad Feeser. He owns and shoots Hearty Films. Hearty, like your heart. Hearty Films. And I knew that's the guy. I mean, Hearty. I was asking for a guy with heart. And Hearty Film shows up. So we went on a project. I'm an ambassador for a nonprofit here in Austin called Wellaware. And Wellaware builds sustainable deep water well solutions for people in mostly in East Africa. So deep water, sustainable water, and 100% of their wells work. They're a fabulous organization. And being an ambassador, and I shoot for them, they asked me if I could do film and photography, and I said I can, but one's going to suffer or the other's going to suffer. If you really want it done right, bring in another gun that can do the film. And so I said I know a guy, and
I got a
guy, and he killed it. He did great. They love it. They love the film he put together. And so we really got to work in the trenches together and see how we work together. And we worked really well together. And at that point, I was like, wait, this is the guy. This is him, man. This is who I asked for. So I pitched it to him. I said, I got this crazy idea. I want to go try to find this guy that told me the sky is my roof, the land is my room. I've got something I want to deliver to him. So what the question I posed is, what could I possibly give to a man who has nothing, but a man who could be said has everything? How American to think I could show up if I find him and give him some money. Like,
right.
Wow, it's a sad dude. He has non-attachment to things, okay? Like, possibly bring to him as we pose this question. And so I have this box, this wooden box, and we allude to it throughout the film. We've already gone. We went in August last year. We went and shot the India part. We haven't been able to share what happened yet. Sorry, guys. My mother doesn't even know.
We'll have you back on the show. We'll have you back when the film is out.
Great.
And you can talk to us about it.
Perfect. Yeah, so we're on lockdown, and it's hard to say no to people, but it's going to make it that much more special. But in the film, we sort of allude to this box, and there's moments where I'm opening the box and I'm maybe putting something inside the box, but you can't see what it is. It's like, what's in the box? So what is in that box is an object that was created by people that came, and I reached out, but they also came to me and helped create part of what's in this box. And the object really is this metaphor for what's inside of all of us. So it's universal. What's inside that box is what's inside of you, what's inside of your listeners, what's inside of me, what's inside of all of us. And so that's what I went to deliver back to Mohan, if I could find the man. Right. So that's the journey back. And right now we've been talking to South by Southwest a little bit. They did an article on us before we left. So that's a huge nod for us to maybe premiere it in March of next year.
Right.
So we're hustling for a December deadline to polish it off. We're still shooting some too. We're still developing, but we've got a little bit of time left in front of us. We feel pretty good about where we're at right now.
Well, let me ask you a question. Now, I don't want you to reveal anything about the film. Like I said, we'll have you back and we can talk through the film when it's out. But the spiritual journey, this personal growth journey, in terms of your evolution, not just as a photographer, as an artist, but as a soul, as a person, what was it like this time around going back to India? How did it feel this time around?
Whew, that's a tough question because it was not easy.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean it was not easy?
Well, I was asking a lot of myself to try and go back and create this thing. There's a lot of money involved, as well as expectations. There's all this stuff that swirls around that you really don't have control over. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it came back to an ask. It came back to a trust. It came back to trust the process. It came back to, you're not supposed to know all the answers. You're not supposed to figure it all out. If you had it figured out, life would be boring. Period. It would.
Yes,
you imagine?
it would.
You imagine? Like if you just knew, if everything just worked and everything you did was just work. Everything's perfect, and you just do something, and it's like exactly what you wanted and how you wanted it. I think it would be an ugly world. I think the fact that we are challenged, that we do face these setbacks, we overcome these things, we question ourselves, we see the light, we get this intuition, this otherworldly, behind the veil communication in all of our different ways that we get it. That's the beautiful mystery, isn't it? I mean, I think so.
Well, and it's really interesting because you talk a lot, very passionately, about this idea of trust. And sometimes we get our prayers are answered in a certain way, and we move on from a dark place, and then we get to a new place, and then we're forced to test that again. So you know, from where you were when you first surrendered, you've come to a place of such artistry, such creativity, and now your success has bred, it seems, a moment where you really had to get back to trust again, just in new clothing.
It's my lesson.
Right.
It's my lesson. I mean, and I'll probably have to return to it again.
Well, and that was sort of the next question. It was, as you see your life unfolding outside of photography and the creative process, do you find yourself carrying this message to others? Do you find people coming into your life now that are asking that same question? You said you would never be a sadhu, a renunciant, but do you find yourself now in the role of mentor to people who are now coming to you asking the same questions you were asking?
Yeah, and that can be a weird place for me to be, honestly, because at the end of the day, I ask myself, it's almost like what you've done with your program, the Nobody's Guide, right? I mean, I feel like who am I? And these are questions that we all deal with. Okay, who am I to, right? Who am I to, or what do I know, or like we really have to deal with this. And I've heard even like the top brass guys at NatGeo talk about this. They talk about this complex that we all have, and it is imposter syndrome.
Right.
We're all making it up, man. We're all making it up as we go. I mean, honestly, we are. I mean, things change and things move so quickly, and once you got something figured out, it's going to move and change on you. There's another lesson to be learned. So, I mean, it's imposter syndrome is real. So, when people come to me, it's an honor, and I love that a lot of the times the message in the work can speak. And it opens the door to someone who wants to open to me, right? So then I can have a truly real, authentic conversation about them, because ultimately it's about the person who's viewing it. It's about their response to that piece. It's not about, of course, a lot of people ask me, what did you shoot that with? And, how did you get so close to that person? And how did you, well, I try to turn it back around. Well, how does it make you feel? Why are you drawn to, which one are you drawn to, or why are you drawn to it? Or, ultimately, I want the viewer to be part of the equation, because it's 3-piece equation. It's me, the subject, and the viewer, and that's the beauty of art, whether it's music or poetry or anything. There's the muse, there's the creator, and there's the appreciator or the engaged person.
Landscapes, buildings, humans. There's so many amazing things that we can capture, and the way you capture the human story is very touching. You rely on being able to approach others, and they allow you into their lives in a very intimate way. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting to hear how you talk about that theme of mentorship and how uncomfortable that is, because in a lot of ways, that's the position we all take to someone else. In our last episode, for listeners that are just joining us in this episode, Greg told a really interesting story about a young man that was in his tent at an art show. And go back, listen to that story. I think about that story as we're talking about this, how you provided an opportunity for that young man, 5 years old, the way, he approached you, he approached your art, and you opened yourself up and humbled yourself in that moment. And I think really taught him something special about the nature of humanity, the nature of art. And you may have kicked off a search in their family, mm-hmm. or some kind of discussion in their family. You don't know how that's going to change their lives.
I think we all have so much power we all have so much power in that which
Right.
we do, in our own personal presence with someone else.
Right.
I mean, if someone's there in front of you, give them your attention. You know, I
Right.
think we all have so much power in the way that what we give to other people, and my work serves in that way. You know, and also my presence outside of my work when I'm with people. You know, unrelated to my work, but my presence is what I have to offer them, and we all have that access. We all have the ability to really, truly have heart and empathy and compassion and impact. And I mean, and that's what it all goes back to those mountains in Vietnam, to that blanket weaver, to that woman, that Black Hmong woman,
Right.
who showed me her palms. And in that gesture completely impacted me, my life, and the people who have that piece hanging in their home, including the little boy, including the person in Stockholm, Sweden, including the person in Mexico City, including the family. And, you know, and I'd got to let that go and let that piece be what it is. And we don't need to worry so much about how it's impacting other people once it's been done. But at the moment, you know, in that moment, be as present as I can with these people who are coming to engage in my work, particularly. I'm just so honored and grateful, you know, for this opportunity.
You know, and I'm grateful for something too. You have really helped to encapsulate the nobody concept. One of the reasons I chose that concept when I was writing the Nobody Bible was because it does have a negative connotation at first until you dive a little deeper. And so in a sense, you know, one of my messages is that we're all nobody. But what that means is being nothing is really being everything, as it was taught to me on the spiritual path, that it's about a sense of humility in a lot of ways, and about being present and open and receptive and yielding and available. And that's a tremendous power. And what you do when you create, at least from my perspective, you're behind the camera. So you, in a sense, photography is a very humble art in that respect, because no matter how good of a photographer you are, you're behind the camera. And you're telling the story of what's in front of you. And you're opening the way for that story to be told, whether it's a grove of trees, whether it's 100 million people at the confluence of rivers. It's a very interesting way of thinking about photography. I mean, would you agree with that in a sense, or?
Yeah. I do. Keep going. I'm lost in your words. I love it.
I know sometimes, you know, when I'm out there and I'm talking about this nobody concept, I try to, whatever someone is, you know, you said it so well, we all have this power. And I was doing an interview once, and I gave this answer about nobody is, we're all nobody to each other until we make an introduction,
Mm-hmm.
right? You didn't know who I was. And when I emailed you, I just said hello from nobody in particular. And it sparked this amazing conversation between us, because I really wanted to know about what you do. And then you got curious about what I do. And it's led to these two, I think, very important interviews in this space. And so that takes me to this question. As you move forward now, as you move forward with this path of photography, and you look to your next projects, your next shoots that you're doing, how does all of this come full circle for you today? When we're sitting here having this conversation, and this is normally where I'd ask you about a tip or tool that you can give to our listeners. What are you thinking now for this next part of your journey? As you sit there right now, what are the big things you're thinking about? What are the things you're really working on right now?
Well, I think ultimately it's funny that you use the term full circle, because full circle is me returning back to the mountains of Vietnam. Once
Wow.
we finish the search for, it's called The Man from Mathura is the name of this film about the search for Mohan. Once we completed it, we've done the film circuit. I want for it. I want distribution, and what distribution means. I don't care two hoots about fame. What I want is what comes with fame, which is being seen. And reason I want that is because funding is behind that. And funding allows me to tell the story of my return back to the mountains of Vietnam on that trail to find the woman that my life has been weaved with. All of our lives are weaved together. And this is my chance to tell the story, to go back, to find that woman and tell the story about your gesture is so important to other people. how you treat other people can impact them in a moment. And next thing you know, things have changed for them for good or bad. Let's say good. Let's stay on the, stay up with it. But, yeah, how you treat others is so, so important. And so technically our lives are weaved together. We're all one blanket of humanity. And so if I get the opportunity through awareness of who I am as an artist through this second film, The Man from Mathura, and it brings an investor in who believes in this message, who believes in the art, who believes in the style, the impact, and wants to be a part of it, then I'm back out on a trail in the valley below Sapa, Vietnam.
So it sounds like we're back to the tip and tool of trust. It sounds like that really is your theme, is now you have to keep trusting and letting go and trusting and letting go and trusting over and over. So that's such a powerful metaphor for personal development and personal growth. It is very cyclical. Mm-hmm. You're not rushing towards Vietnam. What you're doing is engaging in a very powerful cycle of letting go and trusting, and that forms a wheel, and that wheel will eventually help you travel to Vietnam. It's such a powerful lesson.
Look at it as nature. Look at it as the blanket weaver's life. I'm planting the seeds. I'm watering the seeds. I'm soon to harvest those seeds. As soon as I harvest those seeds, I'll have what I need to put this blanket together, to craft this story, to move forward in offering this next part of this journey. And thankfully, people are interested. I mean, again, it goes back to gratitude. Like I'm grateful that people would care to listen, to watch, to be inspired, to be informed. There's a lot of amazing people doing amazing things out there, and we've all got it in us. I just happened to find mine on that trail that day in 2005.
Well, that brings us full circle. And I'd like to once again thank you, Greg, so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your story. I love it. For everybody out there, you can find out more at gregdavisphotography.com, themanfrommathura.com, and clothpaperdreams.com. We'll have all of those in our show notes. And what will you take away from this episode? For me, I think it's the idea that sometimes it's okay not to know where the road of personal growth and spirituality will lead. What matters is that you make the most of your time, the people you meet along the way, whether it's thousands of miles away or next door, whether it's 100 million people or someone you meet at a coffee shop, it doesn't matter. It could be that person right next door. Make the most of those moments. You can always find out more about what we're doing at nobodiesview.com or thenobodybible.com, or you can reach out on Twitter and Facebook at Nobody's View. If you like what you hear on the podcast, please consider a review or a subscription. We'd really appreciate it. Keep practicing and have a good week.